There are places in this world that have forgotten God. Places where the prayers of the righteous echo back hollow, where the angels avert their gaze and the Spirit does not dwell. Not out of judgment, but out of something deeper. A silence older than Eden, a darkness that was never given a name. This house was such a place. It looked harmless enough. A 2-story brick home nestled among withering trees, with windows that reflected no sunlight and walls that drank sound. No tragic history was tied to it, no whispers of bloodshed or bones. It was untouched by drama, unsullied by sin. But therein lay its greatest deception, for it was too quiet, too still. When Mara arrived to claim the inheritance left by a dead aunt she barely remembered, she felt it immediately, the presence behind the silence, like the breath of something unseen brushing against the back of her neck. It wasn't fear at first, it was unease, the kind that lingers in the soul like a bitter aftertaste, as if the air itself was remembering something horrible and waiting for her to do the same. The floorboards didn't creak, the faucets didn't drip, even the birds avoided the rooftop. Nature itself refused to witness what happened inside that home. And yet it watched. The feeling became undeniable on the third day. Mara, exhausted from repainting the walls, peeled back a corner of the living room wallpaper and froze. There, etched in fading black ink, was an eye. Not a design, not an abstract swirl. An eye, with veins, with a slitted pupil, with an expression, if such a thing is possible, of knowing. She tore away more of the paper. 5 more eyes. 10. 20. Each one unique, some weeping, some wide in terror, some half-lidded, almost sleepy. But none were closed. Not a single one blinked. They were drawn not by a professional, but by someone possessed by obsession. Over and over and over, hundreds of eyes staring, unblinking, unmerciful. Mara stumbled back, heart pounding like a war drum. Her thoughts scrambled for logic. Maybe her aunt was mentally ill. Maybe this was some strange art therapy. But even as she reasoned, she could feel the gaze. Not in the room, in her bones. As if something inside the wall had seen her and was now alert. It is written in Ezekiel 80:10, "So I went in and saw, and behold every form of creeping things, and abominable beasts, and all the idols of the house of Israel portrayed upon the wall round about." That vision, a desecration of the holy space, was a warning. And yet Mara, like the men of old, continued to walk deeper into the sanctuary of blasphemy. That night, she heard the first whisper, not from a dream, not from her mind, from the wall. A soft, crackling murmur like dry leaves being crushed underfoot. It was followed by a scratching, gentle at first, then insistent, like something trying to crawl through from the other side. And then a voice. It didn't speak in words. Not at first. It breathed her name. Mara. She didn't scream. She couldn't. She sat frozen, the blanket pulled to her chin, heart clawing at her ribs. Every instinct screamed, do not move. Do not listen. Do not look. But she did. She looked at the wall, and she saw it. A new eye, drawn in fresh ink, directly above her bed, still wet, still glistening. And it was open. The ritual of watching Mara's world began to unspool. Days lost meaning. Sleep fled her. Food had no taste. Water could not quench the dryness in her soul. She wandered the house like a ghost drawn from room to room by invisible threads. The eyes were multiplying, not just in the living room now, but everywhere, under cupboards, behind vents, etched into the backs of drawers, drawn behind the medicine cabinet. And not just ink anymore. Some were scratched into the wood. Others looked seared, as though burned in by fire. One behind the hallway light switch appeared to be stitched in hair. She tried to cover them. Paint, tape, wallpaper. Nothing held. The coverings fell off within hours. The eyes always returned. It is said in Proverbs 15:93, "The eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good." But these eyes did not belong to the Lord. These were watchers of another kind, void of grace, absent of mercy. not sent to judge sin, but to consume innocence. Then the dreams began. She would wake gasping, memories flooding in from nightmares that tasted like truth. She was not herself in the dreams. Sometimes a man with torn robes kneeling before an altar, other times a child clutching a dead rabbit, chanting in a language that bled. In each dream, she was in the house, in that room, and always the eyes. And always the final phrase whispered by unseen mouths tore, "The eyes must remain open." One night desperate, she contacted a local contractor named Harris. She needed the wall gone, needed to see what was behind the veil. He arrived, quiet and skeptical, but curious enough to stay. As he swung the hammer, the drywall cracked with a sound like bone. Dust swirled in a sudden windless breeze. Behind the wall, they found it. A cavity hollow and suffocating, no larger than a coffin. The walls of the chamber were covered in yellowed parchment, sewn, nailed, and glued with a black resin that smelled like rot and rust. The pages were written in dozens of hands, some frantic, others meticulous. All spoke of being watched. All ended with the same plea: the eyes must remain open. In the center of the space, nestled like an offering, was an altar. Not ornate, crude, made of wire, broken glass, tiny animal skulls, and melted wax. And atop it sat a human jawbone, cracked down the center, with human teeth still embedded. Harris dropped his tools and backed away. "Mom, this ain't right." He left. She never saw him again. That night, Mara woke to find a new eye. Not ink, not etched, flesh. A human eye embedded directly in the plaster above her nightstand. Wet, alive, and when she screamed, it moved, rolled, slow and deliberate, to look straight at her. The whispering returned. This time, not as a murmur, it was a chorus. Dozens of voices layered over one another, vibrating the very foundation of the home. From every wall, every ceiling, every crack in the floor, the chant rose like a demonic hymn. W-A-T-C-H, way-T-C-H. H. It didn't stop when she covered her ears. It didn't stop when she ran. It only grew louder, stronger, until the very walls seemed to shudder with power. Until she collapsed in the hallway, sobbing, begging for sleep, for silence, for death. But the eyes do not grant mercy. They only watch. Some say insanity is a descent, a slow spiral down into madness. But the truth is more terrifying. It's a replacement. One day you're thinking your thoughts, hearing your voice, and the next something else is inside you, thinking for you, watching through you. By the fourth week in the house, Mara's body still moved, but her mind was no longer alone. The eyes were everywhere now, not just on the walls, but in mirrors, inside cereal boxes, behind the skin of fruit. A cluster of blinking lids had formed in the bathtub drain, opening and closing with every drip like the lungs of a beast. The voices in the walls no longer whispered. They instructed. Don't leave, don't blink. Keep watching, you are their pupil now. The house had devoured her, not physically, but spiritually. It swallowed her past, her name, her memories of light. What remained was a vessel, not Mara, but an open window through which they could look. She forgot the sound of her mother's voice, the warmth of the sun, the latter of wind. The things of God became distant echoes. His word, once whispered in comfort, now fell silent in her mouth. The eyes rejected it. Her lips cracked when she tried to speak Psalm 23 aloud. Yeah, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. The hallway lights flickered. Taw, I will fear no evil. The floor beneath her shook. The walls trembled. Chor, for thou art with. A shriek tore through the house like a trumpet blast, not from her lungs, but from the very walls, a wailing rejection of the holy name. The eyes above her door began bleeding. Thick, black tears pooling like oil at her feet. This was not a haunting. It was a possession, not of her body, of the house itself. Something ancient lived in the structure. Not a ghost, not a demon, but something older, something that remembered the pre-Adamic days, before man, before Eden. before the fall. A watcher. A sentinel. One of those cursed to observe and never sleep. Like the Grigori, the ones cast down for desiring the daughters of men, the Nephilim's fathers. Their punishment, to see forever and never be seen. The house was a sanctuary of their curse, and now Mara was its priestess. But then something happened, something that had not happened since the first eye was drawn. One morning, or what she thought was morning, she awoke to silence. Not just the absence of voices, the absence of presence. The eyes were closed. All of them. The ones in the walls, the ones in the sinks, even the flesh eye in the plaster. All sealed shut, some gently, others sewn or fused by unseen hands. The house smelled different, not rot, dust, like something had finally died. For the first time in weeks, she stood upright. Her thoughts returned in fragments. Her breathing slowed. She moved through the house with trembling steps, unable to speak, unable to believe. Was it over? Had God broken through? Had her prayers, however broken, reached the heavens? As she stepped into the kitchen, she saw herself. But it wasn't a mirror, it was her. Another Mara, standing by the fridge. Same face, same clothes, but with subtle wrongs. The smile too wide, the eyes a little too focused. Her hands moved like they were remembering how to be human. I blinked, the double said. The words didn't echo, they sank. You weren't supposed to. The horror wasn't in the words, it was in the meaning. Mara had failed. She had blinked. She had broken the covenant of the Watchers. The silence wasn't deliverance, it was judgment. The floor beneath her cracked. A hum rose from below, low and wet, like the sound of a throat clearing in hell. She fell to her knees. Her vision blurred. Her breath came in gasps, and that's when the pain started. Eyes tearing through her skin. Tiny slits opened along her arms, her legs, her hands, each one filled with a glistening, bloodshot eye. One opened on her thigh and blinked twice. Another on her palm wept a single tear of ink. The voice in her mind returned. "You will see for them now," she screamed. But the house had no mercy left. Her mouth split and an eye opened on her tongue. It blinked once, then stared. From every wall, every corner, every board and beam, the Watchers exhaled in unity. She sees. She never blinks. She is ours. The other Mara, the doppelganger, smiled wide and faded into the wallpaper, becoming just another drawing, just another eye. And Mara, the real one, the broken vessel, was now part of the house, not a prisoner. A sentinel, an eternal watcher in a temple of horror. Her soul was no longer hers. She was a lens, a camera for cursed things, condemned to observe all evil, all madness, all sin, and never look away. Just like the fallen angels, just like the Watchers of old. Her final thought before her mind was eclipsed completely. Chua, the eyes in the wall never blinked, because they were waiting for mine, EPILOGUE. The new wallpaper months later, a new owner arrived, a soft-spoken painter named Lynn, quiet and kind, with a hunger for solitude. She walked the halls with a smile, commenting on the stillness, the warmth of the sunlight through the curtains. She didn't notice the faint bump beneath the fresh wallpaper in the living room, not at first. But one evening, as she sat with her sketch pad and tea, she heard a noise, a low scratching, soft, rhythmic. She smiled to herself. "Wes, it's just mice." But something in the wall opened, not a door, not a hatch, an eye. It looked at her and blinked.